the alien perspective. The void stretched infinite and silent. Yet to Elra, it was alive with sound, a thrumming pulse of data and light that only her kind could perceive. She drifted through the depths of space, her translucent skin shimmering with faint bioluminescence as she absorbed the signals emanating from the blue and white planet below. Earth. Elra's people, the Livax, had watched this world for millennia, waiting for its inhabitants to cross the threshold of interstellar awareness. But now, she was here for a different reason, an anomaly. Elra's focus sharpened as her sensory nodes parsed the signals. The anomaly was located in a city of towering steel and glass, where millions of humans scurried like ants. Among them was the source, a flicker of something that didn't belong, a resonance that pulsed in patterns too deliberate to be natural. Her mission was simple: identify the disturbance, determine its threat, and, if necessary, neutralize it. She cloaked herself in a human guise, her form shifting to mimic the appearance of a young woman with unassuming features and dark hair. The Livax had long perfected this skill. To humans, she was indistinguishable from one of their own. As her feet touched the pavement of the bustling city, the sensory overload struck her like a wave. Voices, machinery, emotions, it all collided in a chaotic symphony. She pushed it aside, focusing on the anomaly's signal. It pulsed faintly, somewhere deep within the labyrinth of streets. Her path led her to a rundown apartment complex, its exterior marred by peeling paint and rusted metal. The signal emanated from within. She stepped inside, her footsteps echoing in the dimly lit hallway. The scent of mildew and old paint clung to the air. As she approached the source, she felt the resonance grow stronger, more erratic, like a caged beast thrashing against its confines. She stopped in front of a door marked 3B. Elra extended her senses, peeling back the layers of reality to see beyond the physical. What she saw made her pause. The room was bathed in an otherworldly glow, its walls pulsing with energy that bent and twisted space. At its center was a human, a young man, perhaps in his early 20s, sitting cross-legged on the floor. His hands hovered over a small, glowing device that seemed to hum in harmony with the resonance. "Who are you?" Elra's voice cut through the silence as she stepped into the room. The human's head snapped up, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and determination. "Stay back," he shouted, clutching the device to his chest. "I won't let you take it." Elra studied him, her gaze piercing. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. That object doesn't belong here. It's disrupting the natural order." "I don't care," the man snapped, his voice trembling. This thing saved my sister's life. She was dying, and it healed her. You can't just take it away." Elra's mind raced. The device was clearly alien in origin, but its design was unlike anything she had encountered before. It pulsed with an energy that felt both familiar and alien, a hybrid of Livax technology and something more primal, more chaotic. How had it ended up in human hands? "What is your name?" she asked, softening her tone. "Ethan," he replied hesitantly. "Why does it matter?" "Because, Ethan," she said, taking a step closer, "you've stumbled upon something far beyond your understanding. If you continue to use it, you could destabilize this entire region. Or worse." Ethan's grip on the device tightened. "I don't trust you. How do I know you're not here to take it and use it for yourself?" Elra hesitated. Trust was a delicate thread, and in this moment, it was fraying. She could sense the device's energy growing more unstable with each passing second. "Listen to me, Ethan," she said. "That device is a conduit. It's not meant to be wielded by anyone who doesn't understand its nature. If it overloads, it could tear a hole in the fabric of reality." Ethan's expression shifted, fear mingling with defiance. "Then help me understand it," he said, his voice a mix of desperation and resolve. "If it can save lives, I can't just let it go." Elra felt a pang of something unfamiliar, an echo of the human concept of compassion. She could see the pain in Ethan's eyes, the weight of his choices pressing down on him. But she couldn't ignore the danger. "I will help you," she said finally, "but you must trust me. If we don't stabilize it, there won't be a world left to save." Ethan hesitated, then slowly extended the device toward her. Its surface glowed brighter as she reached for it, her fingers brushing against its smooth, pulsating surface. The moment she made contact, a surge of energy shot through her, flooding her mind with fragments of memory and knowledge. She saw glimpses of a dying star, a desperate escape, and a race against time. The device wasn't just a tool. It was a beacon, a cry for help from a distant corner of the universe. Elra's eyes widened as the truth became clear. The device was not an anomaly. It was a message, and whatever had sent it was coming. Before she could speak, the air around them shimmered, and a low hum filled the room. Elra turned to Ethan, her expression grave. "We're out of time. They've found us." "Who?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling. "The ones who created this," Elra said, her voice barely above a whisper. "And they're not here to negotiate." The walls of the apartment began to vibrate as a rift tore through the air, spilling light and shadow into the room. From the rift emerged figures cloaked in shifting forms, their presence a void that seemed to consume the light around them. Elra stepped in front of Ethan, her body shimmering as she shed her human guise. Her true form glowed with an intensity that lit the room, her bioluminescent skin radiating a calm, yet fierce determination. "Stay behind me," she commanded. Ethan clutched the device, his knuckles white. "What do they want?" "They want to silence the message," Elra replied, her voice steady. "And anyone who's heard it." The figures advanced, their forms rippling like liquid shadow. Elra extended her arms, channels of light emanating from her palms as she prepared to defend them. The room crackled with energy as the first wave of attackers lunged forward. Elra met them head-on, her movements fluid and precise, each strike a dance of light and energy. Ethan watched in awe and terror, clutching the device as if it were his lifeline. The battle raged around him, the air thick with the clash of opposing forces. And yet, through it all, the device continued to hum, its resonance growing stronger, as if calling out to something or someone. As the last of the attackers fell, dissolving into wisps of shadow, Elra turned to Ethan, her form flickering with exhaustion. "We're not safe here," she said. "We need to leave. Now." Ethan nodded, his grip on the device firm. "Where do we go?" Elra looked at the rift, which still pulsed faintly in the air. "Through there," she said. "It's the only way to find the answers we need." Ethan hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward, his resolve hardening. Together, they approached the rift, the device's glow guiding their way. As they crossed the threshold, the world around them dissolved into light and sound, and the journey truly began. The sniper lay prone on the rooftop, his breath steady and measured as his crosshairs lingered on the wrought iron balcony across the plaza. The streets below were deceptively calm, a false peace that belied the storm brewing within the city. Ethan Drake, a name whispered among intelligence circles, had taken this position 3 hours ago, blending into the night like a shadow stretched thin. The mark was predictable: Gregor Vance, a former diplomat turned arms dealer, whose rise had been as meteoric as it was ruthless. Ethan's orders were clear: eliminate Vance before the trade summit. A simple directive on paper, but in execution, a web of complications. Vance was heavily guarded, his movements erratic, and his network of informants extended into the very agencies hunting him. This wasn't just an assignment, it was a challenge. Ethan's finger hovered over the trigger as he scanned the building through his scope. 3rd floor, left wing. The lights in the target's office had been on for the past 30 minutes. Through the slats of the blinds, Ethan glimpsed movement, shadows pacing back and forth. 3 minutes, came the voice through his earpiece. It was Claire, his handler, her tone clipped but calm. Satellite confirms he's still inside. Window for extraction closes in 15. I see him, Ethan replied, his voice a low murmur. The mic near his throat picked it up effortlessly. His plan was meticulously crafted. Vance would emerge onto the balcony for his nightly cigar, a ritual as predictable as clockwork. The plaza's ambient noise, combined with the muffled hum of the city, would mask the shot. Ethan had already accounted for wind speed, humidity, and the faint distortion caused by the thermal gradient of the building's facade. But something gnawed at him, a nagging sensation just out of reach, like a thread dangling from an otherwise perfect tapestry. He adjusted his scope, widening the view. The guard stationed below were restless, shifting positions more frequently than their training allowed. Two of them exchanged brief words before one disappeared into the building. "Something's off," Ethan muttered. "What do you mean?" Claire's voice sharpened. "They're uneasy. Could be nothing, but—" He trailed off, his instincts screaming otherwise. Ethan trusted his instincts. They had kept him alive through missions that would have buried others. He scanned the surrounding buildings, looking for telltale signs of a counter-sniper, an open window, an unusual glint of light. Nothing. Yet the unease persisted. The office lights flickered. The blinds swayed as Vance's silhouette approached the balcony doors. Ethan tightened his grip on the rifle, his pulse steady, but his senses electrified. "Target is moving," he reported. "Proceed," Claire said. The balcony doors creaked open, and Vance stepped out, his broad frame draped in an immaculate suit. A cigar glowed faintly between his fingers. He leaned against the railing, exhaling a plume of smoke that curled into the night air. Ethan's crosshairs centered on Vance's chest. "Steady," Claire whispered in his ear. Ethan's finger began to squeeze the trigger when, in the periphery of his scope, a flash of movement caught his attention. A figure emerged from the shadows of the adjacent rooftop. A man, clad in black, his posture unmistakably that of a sniper preparing a shot. "Counter-sniper," Ethan hissed, shifting his aim. His pulse quickened as he recalculated. The second sniper's barrel was trained on Vance as well, but the angle suggested something else. A warning shot? An intentional miss? Or was Vance merely a pawn in a larger game? "Abort mission," Claire ordered, her voice firm. "Get out now." "Negative," Ethan replied, his voice steel. "I'm taking the shot." 2 targets. 2 decisions. If he fired at Vance, the counter-sniper might retaliate, leaving Ethan exposed. If he engaged the counter-sniper first, he risked losing his window on Vance. Time stretched, each second a chasm. Ethan exhaled slowly, centering his focus. His rifle shifted, the scope now aligned with the other sniper. He studied the figure, a professional, judging by the smooth, deliberate movements. Ethan made his choice. The suppressed rifle cracked, a whisper that barely disturbed the night. Through his scope, Ethan saw the counter-sniper recoil, his weapon clattering to the rooftop. A clean shot, center mass. The figure slumped, vanishing into the shadows. Ethan swung back to Vance, who was still oblivious, enjoying his cigar. For a moment, the absurdity of the situation struck him. The man was a heartbeat away from death, yet utterly unaware of the chaos unfolding in his orbit. He lined up the shot once more. The rifle's reticle hovered over Vance's chest. The shot would be easy, clean, precise, a punctuation mark at the end of a dangerous sentence. "Ethan, extraction window is closing," Claire urged. Ethan hesitated. Something about the counter-sniper didn't sit right. Too professional, too deliberate. Was he protecting Vance? Or was he after someone else entirely? The questions gnawed at him, threatening to fracture his focus. "Drake!" Claire barked. Ethan fired. The rifle's suppressed report was barely audible, but its impact was decisive. Vance staggered, clutching his chest, his cigar falling from his hand as he crumpled to the ground. "Target neutralized," Ethan confirmed, already dismantling his rifle. His movements were swift but methodical, every second a potential lifeline. "Good. Now move," Claire snapped. Ethan slung the disassembled weapon into his pack and slid toward the edge of the rooftop. He glanced once more at the adjacent building. The counter-sniper's body lay motionless, but something about the angle seemed wrong. He descended the fire escape, his mind racing. Who was the second sniper? A rival operative? A decoy? As he melted into the alleyways, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that this mission had been far more than it seemed. Somewhere in the labyrinth of the city, new players were making their moves, and Ethan Drake was determined to find out who and why. The turning point and final showdown. The chamber was vast, its stone walls bearing the scars of countless battles waged long before this moment. Flickering torches lined the space, their light casting eerie shadows that danced across the ancient glyphs etched into the walls. At the center of the room, a jagged pedestal pulsed with a dark, malevolent energy, a swirling black crystal suspended above it, seemingly alive. Kale stepped forward, his breath steady despite the weight of the moment. His twin swords, forged in the fires of the old forge, gleamed faintly in the dim light. The warrior's every movement carried purpose, his crimson cloak billowing softly behind him. He glanced over his shoulder at his companions. To his right stood Elira, her emerald eyes sharp with determination. The mage's slender fingers clutched her staff, its crystalline tip glowing with a soft, golden light, a stark contrast to the darkness surrounding them. Her voice, usually calm and measured, now held an edge. Kale, we have one chance. If that crystal bonds fully with him, there will be no stopping it. On Kale's left, Jorik adjusted his massive warhammer, its spiked head resting heavily on the ground. His thick arms and scarred face bore the marks of countless battles. Just say the word, he growled. We end this here, or we die trying. At the far end of the chamber, a figure emerged from the shadows. Malroth, the self-proclaimed herald of the abyss, exuded an aura of unrelenting malice. His once human features were twisted, corrupted by the crystal's power. His hollow eyes glowed with unnatural light, and dark veins spidered across his pale skin. He raised one hand, and the air between them shimmered with dark energy. So predictable, Malroth sneered, his voice echoing unnaturally. You think you can stop me? The crystal has chosen me. I am its vessel. It will made flesh. Kale tightened his grip on his swords. You were once a guardian of these lands, Malroth. You swore to protect them. Look at what you've become. Malroth's laughter filled the chamber, a cold, mirthless sound. A guardian? No, Kale. I was a pawn, a puppet of a failing order. The crystal showed me the truth. Power is the only law, and I will wield it to reshape this world. The air grew heavier, the oppressive weight of the crystal's energy pressing against Kale's chest. Elira took a step forward, her staff raised. We're not here to debate. Whatever shred of humanity you had is gone. This ends now. With a roar, Malroth raised both arms, and the chamber erupted into chaos. Tendrils of dark energy lashed out from the crystal, splitting the floor and sending jagged stones tumbling. Kale surged forward, his blades slicing through the tendrils that came too close. The air crackled with energy as Elira chanted, her magic forming shimmering barriers to shield them from the onslaught. Jorik charged headlong into the fray, his hammer swinging in wide arcs. He smashed through a column of writhing shadows, clearing a path toward Malroth. Keep him busy, he bellowed. I'll break that damned crystal. Not so fast. Malroth snarled, thrusting a hand forward. A wave of black fire erupted, forcing Jorik to skid to a halt and raise his hammer defensively. The fire struck with a deafening explosion, sending him staggering back. Kale darted in from the side, his movements swift and calculated. He aimed for Malroth's exposed flank, but the corrupted figure was faster than he anticipated. With an almost lazy motion, Malroth deflected the strike, sending Kale tumbling back. You're outmatched, Malroth said, his voice dripping with contempt. Surrender, and perhaps I'll grant you the mercy of a quick death. Kale wiped blood from the corner of his mouth, rising to his feet. You underestimate what you've taught us, Malroth, he said coldly. You've shown us the cost of failure. That's why we won't stop. Behind him, Elira's chanting reached a crescendo. The golden light of her staff intensified, coalescing into a spear of pure energy. She hurled it at the crystal, its trajectory true and unwavering. But before it could strike, Malroth raised his hand, and the spear shattered against an invisible barrier. Is that all? Malroth taunted, stepping closer to the crystal. Witness the power of the abyss. The chamber trembled as the crystal flared, its light growing blindingly intense. The tendrils retracted, converging on Malroth's outstretched hands. His form began to shift, growing larger, more monstrous. Dark wings unfurled from his back, and his voice deepened, reverberating with a guttural resonance. You cannot defeat a god. Kale exchanged a glance with Elira and Jorik. Their faces betrayed no fear, only grim determination. They had faced the impossible before, and won. Elira, we need a window, Kale said, his voice steady. Jorik, cover me. Elira nodded, her staff already glowing as she prepared a spell. Jorik hefted his hammer, positioning himself between Kale and Malrotha's advancing form. With a roar, Jorik charged again, his hammer blazing with runic energy. He swung it in a powerful arc, colliding with Malrotha's wing and forcing the creature to stumble. Elira's spell activated, a shimmering dome of light enveloping the battlefield and temporarily suppressing the crystal's energy. Now, she cried. Kale didn't hesitate. He dashed forward, weaving through the chaos with the precision of a blade. Malrotha's corrupted form lashed out, claws swiping inches from Kale's face. But the warrior was faster, more focused. He leapt onto the pedestal, his swords raised high. You're nothing without that crystal, Kale said, his voice cutting through the noise. Let's see how you fare without it. Before Malroth could react, Kale plunged both swords into the crystal. A deafening crack filled the chamber as the blades pierced its surface. The swirling energy within the crystal exploded outward, engulfing the room in a blinding light. When the light faded, Kale stood atop the shattered pedestal, his swords glowing faintly. Malroth lay crumpled on the ground, his monstrous form reverting to his frail, human self. The once mighty herald of the abyss was broken, his power extinguished. The silence was deafening. Elira approached cautiously, her staff still glowing, while Jorik lowered his hammer, his chest heaving from exertion. It's over, Kale said, his voice low but firm. The crystal is destroyed. Malroth coughed weakly, his voice barely a whisper. You think this changes anything? The abyss is eternal. Kale sheathed his swords, his expression unreadable. Maybe, but you won't live to see it. As Malrotha's last breath escaped him, the oppressive energy in the chamber dissipated, leaving only the faint glow of the torches. The three companions stood together, their victory hard-won, but not without cost. Elira glanced at Kale, her eyes softening. It's done. For now. Kale nodded, his gaze fixed on the shattered remains of the crystal. For now. Without another word, they turned and made their way back through the ruined halls, the weight of their victory tempered by the knowledge that the abyss was never truly gone. Their journey was far from over.